Uh, yes. Hi, Dwiji. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let's see if
Is there any background noise or something from my end?
no, there's some background from my side, but it shouldn't be too bad.
It's clear. It's clear.
Okay. Yeah. Are you able to hear me properly?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I don't think I can improve my light, but okay. ठीक है. Okay, this is the two of us. Oh, it's not yet time. Okay. ठीक है. So, I'll just share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, you have to allow me to.
Okay. Wait.
Yeah.
Yes. It's done. Let me just allow everyone in the chat box to. Yes.
I should share my computer audio as well because I wanted to show a movie.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just share the entire screen.
By the time I'll again send
Hello.
confirmation and reminder email to everyone.
Yeah. So
So you can see it.
I just realized
Mhm.
Namaskara, Dwiji.
Namaskara.
How
Sorry.
was how was the session with our folks?
Hey, Ashish. What's up?
Yes, good.
Well, I didn't answer your call, so you caught me here. Sorry, Sunday I was in the middle of
No,
something.
yeah, I thought you
I
might have.
didn't call you back.
Yeah. I hope you gave some assignment or something.
What? I thought you had already seen it.
I saw. Yes, correct.
Rambav garu, బాగున్నారండి?
Hmm.
లేదనుకుంటాను. So, yeah, I mean, I gave some assignment. I'm not sure
How they'll do it.
how easy or difficult they find it.
Yeah,
It,
let's see.
it wasn't
Mhm.
too complicated. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll send them your that millet seminar
Mm-hmm.
as well as this one. I also will go online, right? And there's one
Sure.
more, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
before this.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
this.
there's a bunch of them. So, most of them are on YouTube.
Yeah, there's this one series of 10, and then
Yes.
there are two master classes, this one and there's one more, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
That I'll just send.
So, but in the sessions that we are doing for that course, I've not been talking about millets. So it's been more generic.
General, yeah,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Hmm. So, Sumedha,
Yes, Vijay.
you have sent a reminder, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Let's just wait for a few more minutes and
For a
then,
couple of minutes, we can wait and then we can think.
yeah.
Start. I'll again just push it on Insta and WhatsApp groups. Just give me 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Entire screen, share. Okay. So, how is the course going, Ashish?
It's fine so far. We've done quite a few changes compared to the last version.
Okay.
So we're just seeing, I mean, we'll take feedback from the students and then see how further to change it. What is you saw the schedule, right?
Yeah, more than the schedule, I was interested by the number of people. Like, that was a good distribution. It's also interesting that there are so many people who have started and who are looking for this kind of support.
Right.
So that was
Yeah, about
also,
30 plus, I think.
yeah.
So if you have any suggestions to add some session or something, you let us know. We can try and
Okay.
we kept a mix of things. Let's see.
I mean, Palak did ask me for references for some of the other sessions. I was like, नहीं boss, अभी इतना नहीं है मेरा. So, yeah, I mean, it's quite a challenge because I also had, in the interactions I could see there's a spectrum of different enterprises. Like people are not doing the same thing, right? So each one is
Yes.
doing their own thing. So to engage that diversity will be a
Challenge.
it'll be a challenge to find some topics that would engage them all. But yeah, the basic topics itself, it's also challenging because we are talking of small scale and typical, business development and stuff like that. They focus on
Large
large
scale. Yeah.
scale and not bootstrap operations. They look at it in terms of big investments and all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Rambab Garu, Unara, how are you, sir? No, not yet. Okay. The other thing I found, not found, but I was looking for is what are their educational backgrounds?
Participant profile, I think we may have sent to you, right?
It's not there in that.
It's not there.
Nope.
Okay.
How many
Yeah,
of
we
them?
have that. We have collected that during the submission.
Yeah.
That we can send to you.
Yeah. Palak said she will compile it and share it. I
Yeah.
should just send her a reminder.
Yeah. That's there in the application form is there. So she'll have to take it from
Yes.
there. So
Yes. Yeah, I would
how's
think
that
so.
residency course going?
Well, the discussions are going well, but doesn't look like we have too many participants there, registrations.
Okay.
So it is, I mean, they are trying to bring in a lot of things, which is needed if you're doing a residency kind of thing, that much to banta hi hai. I don't know why, but no, I mean, I have some ideas why, but people are not committing to something like that. So they are talking to some organizations to even, support, provide financial support. So they might have something going for that too. But so in case you haven't yet circulated, do
No,
circulate.
I have circulated. I got it
You
from
did?
Sanchita.
Okay,
I have circulated in all the groups.
nice.
That sent me some other thing also.
Yeah,
It was human resource something that also I circulated.
yeah. So for all the other participants, welcome to the masterclass. We are just waiting for a few more people to join us and chit-chatting while we are waiting about some of the other things that some of us are involved in or engaged with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sumedha, we were talking about this course that the what is that? Farm multiversity? What?
Food systems multiverse.
Food systems multiversity. Sorry. Yeah. Too many multis and too many farm thingies around.
So
So
many systems also.
too many systems also. So that was one thing that we were chatting about. The residency that we were referring to is something that Bihun Foundation and Bihun Trust and Sangatin in Sitapur are conducting on food systems.
Okay.
So yeah, that is a 4-day residency program coming up in October. And this is a 1.5 month online course. The food systems multiversity thing. It's a 1.5 month course in which I took one session and another session is coming up on Thursday, 20th. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
So that's why I was trying to.
Is it available for everyone, or people have to register for the course, or what is the procedure?
Yeah, you have to register, and then then we have a shortlisting process. We'll just talk to you. Why do you want to do the course and all that, and then you are there for 1.5 hours.
So, Dwiji, have you shared it with us, like in RRA Network or something?
Not the course thing. I think I had shared the not me. Sudha had shared the what do you call that? The residency program thing. I'll forward that again.
Sure.
Yeah.
So now we share in the chat box, sir.
Yeah, sure.
We can also circulate within our network.
Actually, Srinath Garu, sorry, but right now sharing will be difficult because my screens are. I have something with my system. I have to share the entire screen. So I'll just share it over the email or phone numbers. I think Sumedha will have that. So we'll circulate that and you will get that. We'll make sure that you get that.
Sure.
Or if you can just put your
Thank you.
phone number in the chat window, I'll make sure I send it to you personally. Yeah. Okay.
People are joining.
Yeah.
2 minutes more, Dwiji, and then I think we should start.
I think it's okay. It's okay. See, I'm also thinking the idea of this is more hands-on and trying to get into the principles of things. So, I would like it to be more interactive. So, and just keep it such that people can unmute themselves, Sumedha, please. Yeah?
Sure. Okay.
Srinath sir, I have copied your number. I'll send it to you after this session.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Ashish has shared the call. Thank you, Ashish.
Okay. So, Vijay, I think let's start the session.
Okay. You want to start and start the recording as well?
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to do a little bit of edit, just the initial part of the video.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Oh, you had already started recording?
Yeah, because every time I forget to start the introduction.
Okay.
Today I started and then I'll edit it.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Sumedha, and I represent RRA Network. So today's webinar is on what do we gain by grading grains. So it is kind of a tongue twister. So this is our 7th masterclass of our ongoing masterclass series, and I welcome all of you, all the participants who have joined us today. Very, very delightful to see you after a long time. And so the last masterclass was on, I think, on fisheries 2 months back, and then lag. There was a lag, and then again I can successfully convinced Dwiji to take this class. Just let me admit people who are joining. Just a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today we again have Dwiji with us, and I think the participants who have joined, they know who Dwiji is. So I'm not going to the introduction of Dwiji. Just a little recap that the previous session, which Dwiji took in April, 8th of April, it was on the brand story, surviving machines, which offered fascinating insights into bran retention in millets and the impact of post-harvest processing on a nutritional integrity. So today he'll be talking about how we can, the masterclass is basically to deep dive into the principles of size and density grading and how the respective machines work, and the recommendation process follow helps deliver nutrition-rich millets to the customer. Now, I would like to invite Dwiji, and Dwiji, yes,
Thank
all
you.
yours, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope my audio is clear and you're able to see the screen. So the reason I put in a tongue twister as the title was intentional, because when it comes to millet processing, I mean, it's non-trivial. And I would say it's not just millet processing, any processing that is conscious of quality, especially nutrition, has to be something that requires some, what shall I say, commitment. And so what do we gain by grading grains? Primarily, we are referring to size and density grading because, because when it comes to millet processing, it's not a single step process. Like in any processing, I would say there are multiple steps, especially so with millet processing. We also need to recognize that there are different types of millet processing depending on the nature of the grains. I won't get into all that too much. I'll focus mostly on the processing and practice of the principles and the practice of two particular aspects of millet processing, which is size and density grading. Now, the reasons for that will come at the end, primarily because I'm guessing most of you are familiar with millet processing and have a broad idea. So I won't spend too much time on the generic information that you might already have a good knowledge of. So just to set the background, in mainstream millet processing, we have 4 steps. We have grain cleaning, and then we have hulling and post-hulling operations. And then there's something called polishing, in which the bran layer is completely taken off. And then there is storage and distribution. Now, this is typically a long supply chain. And like we discussed in the previous session, taking off the bran is like the most market-oriented thing that one can do, where you're not bothered about what is reaching the consumer, but rather about how you can survive in the market or capture the market. So what is the alternative? The alternative is a sustainable approach where we say that you don't just take off the bran, you retain the bran. Now, when you retain the bran, you follow a slightly different, flow or process. The main thing is that you store and you move your storage and handling to the second step itself. So immediately after grain cleaning, you store and handle, you stock it. Now, the reason for this is that once you hull the grains, once you dehusk the grains, the bran is exposed, and once it is exposed, it oxidizes. So all your hulling and post-hulling operations happens whenever there's a demand, and then any flouring, milling, making it into rava and other products comes only when there is a demand. So the idea of storing grains is also something that most of us can relate to, because if you remember, rice that you eat soon after the kharif harvest, it's usually soggy and wet. And then the rice that you eat, let's say in January or February, long after harvest of the kharif crop, you typically get nice, fluffy, dry rice, which is a desirable quality that you primarily get from aging of the grains. So you have to let the grains age, and then you dehusk it, and you get much better quality. And this is not just about millets, it's true about any cereal crop. So this process flow also gives us aged grains. So the quality of the rice that we get, millet rice, here I'm referring to the millet rice, the quality of the millet rice we are able to get from this process is amazingly better than what one can expect if one was using a regular flow. Now, just to give you a brief idea of what is this flow that I'm referring to. So there are two stages of operations. One is pre-hulling and the other is post-hulling. So the two downward columns that you see, the flows that you see, are the two sets of operations. So the first one, you start with a grader with an aspirator preferably, and then you do pure grading, and then you do destoning multiple times. Now, destoning is a conventional word that is used for density grading, because invariably density grading seemed too complicated, I suppose, and it was primarily used for destoning. But as you will see in the next couple of slides, we use it for more than just removing stones. And the reason for that also, I'll come to that. So that first flow, which is the pre-hulling operations, are the first column on this, in this photo over here, in this image over here. And then the second flow, so in between these two columns is the storage. And then the second flow is the hulling and post-hulling operations. And you can see that, I mean, invariably the length is smaller also because it's not any easier, but it's just smaller because the machines that we use are fewer. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, in order to retain the bran and as much of the bran with as little damage as possible, we do maximize the operations that we do in the pre-hulling operations, and we try to minimize the post-hulling operations, because the bran is a very delicate layer which can get damaged. Now, this is the true flow diagram. And as you can see, it's quite complex. It's quite dense, I would say, at least, if not complex. And I would like to highlight a couple of decision points. There are three of them here. The first one is over here. Is my pointer visible? Somebody can give me a thumbs up?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, great. So this is the first decision point. After the grading, we take the good grains and then we take it to a destoner, and then we put it through a destoner and or a density grader and try to remove the pebbles. The output is then examined, and if there are pebbles, then you just go back to it. If there are no pebbles, then you go to the next stage, which is to take out the unfilled grains. So if there are no unfilled grains, then you have your clean good grains that you will store. But if you do have it, you go back to the destoner. Now, the refuse of the destoner, the stuff that you have removed from the destoner, even that is sometimes not an absolute separation, and you might have good grains in that. So you will check for good grains, and if there are good grains, then you take it back to the destoner, and you send it through the same cycle of trying to remove the unfilled grains. Now, the reason we are doing this is that once you have
Dwiji,
yeah,
sorry for interrupting. Yes, I think Ashish sir has also mentioned. Can you please move the window because it is coming on your PPT? So
It is RRA Network Zoom window.
yes,
oh,
yes,
this one.
yes, yes. You
Okay,
can minimize it also. I
I
mean,
can. Okay, let me see. Thank you. Sorry about that. Is this better?
yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. No, I wasn't trying to plug RRA network, though I wouldn't mind plugging RRA network, but yeah.
Yeah,
So where was I? Yeah, I was talking about the grain cleaning operations. So you will see that the machines that we are primarily using are the graders, the size graders, and the destoners, which is basically a density grader. So that's why, I mean, okay, this is the pre-cleaning operations or, the pre-hulling operations, grain cleaning operations. Okay, why isn't this flow moving now? Oh, because I'm on the other screen. Okay, now it moved. So the next, the hulling and post-hulling operations. Here we start with the pre-cleaned grains, put it through a huller, and then we put it through a grader, and then after the grading we check how much rice is there and what. So the main flow are the thick arrows. So again, it's quite dense, apologies, but this uh, flow diagram completely encapsulates the process flow, that and the various products that we get from the millet processing. And if you notice, this is way back from 2016, and thanks to IDRC and Dan Foundation for supporting this work. And there have been some small changes here and there, but overall, the broad strokes, this encapsulates the work that we need to do in millet processing almost completely. Um, So yeah, there are multiple outputs that we get, and maybe some other session we can talk about the various materials and both the primary and the secondary products that we get out of it. But what is more important here is that there are primarily four machines in both the pre-hulling and post-hulling operations that we have seen. Just four machines. One is an aspirator, which basically removes the light, ultralight materials. The other is a size grader, which, as you can imagine, grades according to size. The third is a density grader. It grades material according to density. And the fourth is a huller. Now, when we do small scale processing, when we want to move towards a more decentralized, sustainable approach, then we are essentially looking at using the same machines for both pre-hulling and post-hulling operations, with some exceptions. The exceptions, I'll come to that at a later stage. But broadly, these are the primary machines that we need. We do have various other machines that are used in various process flows, especially commercial setups units, but that we tend to avoid because of the thing that we talked about earlier, which is we would want to minimize the post hulling operations, and putting it through a color sorter, putting it through various other gravity separator and other things, it essentially increases the abrasion of the bran layer, which is not desirable. So these are the machines, and in this session we are going to focus primarily on the size grader and the density grader. So let's just get to this. Okay, by the way, this image is actually very reflective of a very simple setup that we have in Sitapur, Uttar Pradesh. It's run by the Samta Kisan Mazdoor Sangathan, and it was set up with the assistance of an NGO called Sangathan, and it is maintained and marketing is done by another entity called Healthy Awad Private Limited. So it's like a consortium of a farmer labor sangathan of an NGO and this private company, which we have set up with a non-profit objective. The idea is that we have multiple people working who are part of the Sangathan, who are trained to, who are also themselves growing millets as part of their Kheti Khana Poshan initiative. And some of them are trained to operate the machines and do the quality checks and do the entire processing. And what you see here is one group of people, which is typically four, one team that has come to process. I think they're processing kodo millet in this photograph. And yeah, so just to get to the size grading. Now, when we look at size grading, it's a very simple device. What we would do with a sieve is what we are trying to do with a machine here. And as you can imagine, there's basically sieves that need to be appropriately selected. And then we need to set the flow rate properly because it's a definite length over which the material flows. So we need to confirm that it is doing its job properly or not. So if it's not doing it properly, then we decrease the flow rate so that I'll come to that later. And of course, the last two steps are the most crucial ones. We need to check for quality, and depending on the quality of the output, we repeat the process. None of these are digital processes. It's not a 0 and 1 kind of thing. There will always be partial results, primarily because we are dealing with rain-fed crops. We are dealing with dryland agricultural products. When you look at irrigated crops and when you look at the size distributions in rain-fed crops, the rain-fed crops have a much wider size distribution when compared to a rain-fed crop or even an industrial process for that matter. Now, what do we mean by sieves? Now, there are different types of sieves. What you see on the leftmost with the wires crisscrossing, that's called a wire mesh. And as you can see, it has these, wherever they cross each other, it forms a dimple. And therefore, the flow of the material is quite turbulent. But it also gives us better sieving. So it's kind of a trade-off when you look at these things, because as you can imagine, whenever it's turbulent, you have rolling of the grains. And whenever you have grains rolling, you are essentially going to have, and these are not spherical grains, right? I mean, I'm just assuming that you are all familiar with the shape and contours of a millet grain. So they are bound to get stuck in the mesh. So in the wire mesh. So the alternatives that we use are these punch sheets. So either we use a flat round punch sheet or a slotted punch sheet. Now, both these have advantages and disadvantages. So what's the best way? Is there an empirical formula to use to select? Frankly, no. I mean, we do not have a definite formula. It depends on the produce that you are trying to grade. Now, the reason I am emphasizing this aspect is that it's non-trivial. Sometimes what we expect a round hole punched sheet to do well actually works out better in a slotted one. And yeah, I mean, there are reasons for that, too complicated to go into that right away. But when maybe in the Q&A we can discuss this a little, or when we have a separate session on some of these aspects, we can discuss that. So the slotted sheets typically give us the maximum throughput, and that's why a lot of machine fabricators prefer slotted sheets. But slotted sheets also have certain drawbacks that we'll come to at a later stage, pretty soon actually. So the basic principle of size grading, just in case it was not clear, you have a mixture of various sizes, grains of various sizes that are dropped on an inclined machine with an inclined bed. Now, typically, you have 2 or 3 sieves. I prescribe only using 2 sieves for grain cleaning. And for the post-hulling operations, the pre-hulling operations, I prescribe 2 sieves. But for post-selling operations, I actually prescribe a single sieve. We'll come to that at a later stage. So the top sieve, this one, has bigger holes, and the grains that are even bigger than the holes flow above the sieve. The ones that are smaller fall through, and the second sieve has smaller holes. Now, those in between, the grains that are in between these two sides of the holes, they flow through in between, and the ones that are smaller, it could be grains, it could be material other than grains too, they fall through and they are collected in a second or a third port actually. So we have three ports or three fractions that we get whenever we sieve. We use a two sieve grader. Now, in practice, what does that mean? In practice, it means that you install your first sieve first. So I'll come to this part where we use the frame and select the sieves, and then we put it in the frame. And then the framed sieve is then installed, the smaller one with the one with the smaller holes goes in first. And on top of that, the one with the bigger holes goes in. And then the ports are assembled. In this photograph, you will see, you can't see the topmost port. It actually drops down the material in this direction. You can see the middle fractions port here. So the grains will flow down this way and out here. And the smaller fraction, you can barely see that port over there, but that's okay. That's where we collect the sand and mud and other stuff, really small grains. Now, let's go to the next one. So this is how it works in practice. One person is loading up the grains, and another person is constantly running a brush over the sieve. And the reason for that is, wait, I don't want this to play yet. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this one. The reason for this is this. As you can see in this photograph, it's a slotted screen. And what we are seeing is essentially a lot of the rice that has, what shall I say, clogged the slots, right? So whenever you have rain-fed grains, whenever you have the hulled rice, you will have a distribution of sizes. So invariably, there will be some slice of that distribution which will match the hole size or the slot size. So you will end up with these eyes, what we call as eyes of a sieve, getting clogged up. And that's why we need to have this operation whenever we are looking to get quality output. So if you think of the flow or the factors that I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, you do the sieve selection, you set the flow rate, and then you check for quality of the output. Now, after you have checked the quality of the output and you know that this fraction is not getting cleaned properly, you use that particular sieve, you inspect that particular sieve and see if it has that clogged. Yeah, if it is clogged. If it is clogged, then you repeat the material. There is no getting away from this. And that's why that dense process flow and those decision points where you have to assess whether you can go forward or you have to repeat. So this is what that repeat of the process entails. Now, this video, I think it is running on double speed. No, it is running on normal speed. Let me just increase the speed. So here our team members, they are assembling the sieves after they have selected the right size. They are assembling it on a frame. And as you can see in the photograph on the left, the reason we do this kind of assembly is that we have to select different sieves. And for each sieve, if we have to put a frame or keep a dedicated frame, it becomes one, extremely expensive, and two, bulky for storage. So at every, before the start of every process, every day's processing, we select the right sized sieves, and then fit it into the frame, and then that frame is put into the machine, and that's what you are seeing here. And yeah, so here you can see, ouch, what happened? Wait, I wanted it to pause a little bit more. No, sorry. Damn. So let's see if I... Yeah, so you can see the port for the smallest fraction over here. I hope you can see my pointer. So that's where we collect the sand and the mud and really small grains which we can use as chicken feed. And our good grains flow in through this. And after this, you can see the bolt holes over here. This is where the port for the topmost fraction is installed. And as you can see in this image over here, here we are using a single sieve because we want to run the brush as the material is flowing so that we improve the efficiency of the sieving. Yeah, I talked about this. So now let's just quickly go to the density grader. I would like to emphasize that density grader is a much more the simplest way to put it is not the simplest way, the best way to put it is non-linear, but the best way to understand that, or get a grip on this, is that small changes will in the control parameters will lead to huge changes in the output parameters. I'll just repeat that. In a density grader, a small change in the airflow or the flow rate, these are the two primary control parameters we have. A small change in this will lead to a big change in the quality of the output. Now, there are other factors also in this, like for example, what is the volume of the air that comes in through the mesh of the bed, or the angle of this bed. So these are two strong static parameters, let's say, parameters that are not something that get changed often. It's changed when you have dramatically different grains that you're trying to density grade. But for most, we set the fan the fan speed and the volume of the air to be a constant, and the bed angle also to be a constant. Now, and of course, there's the quality check and the repeat. Now, how do we control the airflow? We control the airflow using the sliding door over here. And this is a photograph from the inside of the density grader, the destoner. On our left is a big fan, and you can see a mesh or a big mesh over here. That's the door that you are seeing here. So this is that opening that you are seeing there, and as you can see, it has a sliding door. Now you use the sliding door, and what we have here is actually another door which is used to clean the inside of the machine. I'll come to that at a in a later stage, or in a later slide. So we use the sliding door to control, and it is important that when we are talking of airflow in this density grader, to remember to check that all other openings are closed properly. So once you turn on the machine and before you start the material flow rates or try to set the material flow rate, you make a check and have it as part of your regular SOP, standard operating procedure, to check that there is no air leakage in any of the other openings that we typically keep in these machines so that we can clean these properly. Now, the basic principle of a density grader is what I'm showing here. This is a little more complicated than a size grader, because here we are talking, I did warn you that it's a non-linear system. So here we are talking of buoyancy and gravity. So, if you studied physics in your undergrad, maybe it's there in engineering too. But if you studied physics in your undergrad, You might remember that whole dropping of a feather and dropping of a ball. Yeah, that's what we are talking about, buoyancy and gravity and all that. So just to keep it fairly simple and easy to understand, there is air that is getting blown from under the bed, and the bed is a mesh. So through the mesh of the bed, there's air getting blown out, and the grains are falling, and because it's inclined, it's going to flow like this. But in order to get an interaction between the air and the grain flow, the bed is moved in the backward direction. So it's moved against the grain flow, against the inclination of the bed. Now, what this does is every time the grains get tossed up, it's a toss actually. It's not like an escalator which just keeps moving. It's like a toss. So it's called a de-stoner, and many a time it's also called a elliptic grader, because the critical component inside is elliptical. So it's called an elliptical grader also sometimes. But basically, it's jerky, it bounces, it throws the grains upward, as in against its natural flow. So the lighter grains will get blown with the wind, with the air that is coming up from below, and also because of the inclination. And the denser grains go up because the jerk of the throw, not the jerk, but the throw of the movement of the bed carries it forward. So the momentum is heavy enough to counter the air, the buoyancy, and move upward. So this way we have denser material coming to the back and lighter material coming to the front. Now, the reason we refer to this as a density grader and not just a de-stoner is because, and as you can imagine, stones being denser, they will go to the back, and grains which are lighter will come to the front. Now, when we look at materials which are, okay, let's stick to this or even go back to this. So when we look at material that is not just where we are not just trying to remove stones, but also the ultralight material. Now, what are these ultralight material? Now, these are typically immature grains. That's the easiest way to look at them. These grains did not mature enough by the time the crop was ready to harvest. And when the farmer harvests, they harvest the entire thing, entire panicle, and they thresh the entire panicle. So a good fraction of the immature grains come through the size grader and the aspirator and into the de-stoner. So we are not just looking to remove the pebbles and stones, but we are also looking to remove the ultralight material. Now, how do we do that? We do it by, in the first iteration, let's just go back to the flow diagram here. So in the first iteration, in the first pass to the de-stoner, or the first time we take it to the de-stoner, we are essentially trying to separate out heavier grains and pebbles. In the second pass, we are trying to separate out unfilled grains and good grains. So that's the key point here, that we use the same machine, which is the de-stoner, for removing the pebbles. We also use it in another pass with a different setting to remove the unfilled or immature grains. And that's also used, or the same principle is also used in the process of post-hulling operations. Now, in the post-hulling operations, we have rice and we have unhulled grains that come out as part of our huller output. Now, this separation of the rice from the unhulled grains is important, because if we don't separate out the rice that has, or the grains that have already been hulled and has become rice, then essentially in the second pass through the huller, you would end up with bran getting impacted against the huller surface, which would lead to bran damage and bran loss. So in order to get maximum bran retention and minimum bran damage, we need to separate out the rice from the unhulled grains so that the unhulled grains can be put back into the huller, and that's why we use a destoner. Now, I had asked, I'll just pause this for a moment, and I had asked that we have a a cup of grains as well as a cup of that grains rice. You take it, if you can bring it to the session. Can we just have a show of hands if how many of you have this material with you? You can use the raise your hand feature, or uh, you know unmute yourself, or I don't know, show, just turn on your video and share the what do you say, photos or an image of your point your phone to your cup of grains. Okay. In case you don't have it, it's okay too. The idea of asking for that was to look at this practically, that the density of rice is actually different from the density of the grain. And most of you, if you have been doing millet processing, you or any processing, you probably know that a sack of grains will be lighter than the same sack with rice filled in it to the same volume. So if you take a 25 kg rice bag and fill it up with millet rice, and then you empty that and you fill it up with the grains of that same rice, and then you weigh it. So the rice would weigh about 25 kgs and the grains would weigh about 20 to 22 kgs, maybe even 23 kgs, depending on the quality of the material. Now, as quality as in maturity of the grains, the size distribution of the grains, how thick the husk is, various parameters. Now, this difference in density is what we are using to separate out the hulled and the unhulled grains in the post-hulling operations. Now, so just to, I was just trying to tie it into the practical thing of where the grains, where is it that we use this principle? Yeah, this principle of density based separation or grading. Now, the photos that you see here are of the deck bed, the bed of the D-stone deck. And this is from the top and this is from the bottom. And as you can see, even from the top, you can see that there's actually a framework that is holding down the mesh. And below that framework are different sized mesh screens. And that's what you see from the underside here. Now, these meshes have been put in with some calculations, with some experience, to get the right kind of airflow in different parts of the destoner bed. Now, this manipulation or this distribution of the airflow is what we really need in a destoner, from a destoner. Because when we have the proper mesh on the deck bed, I'm sorry, I'm going slowly because there are many different meshes here. So I'm referring to the mesh on the deck bed, this one, because this is something that we can change. And we do change it when we are trying to do grains versus when we are trying to do the post-hulling operation. That is, when we are trying to separate out the rice and the unhulled grains. Now, the reason for this is, as you can imagine, the size of the holes in this mesh determines how well we can separate out the rice and the unhulled grains. Now, if we use the same mesh that we use when we are doing the grains, the efficiency of the separation is not that good, which means that in order to get good quality, we have to repeat the steps multiple times, which means that our bran layer, because we are talking of post hulling operations here, will rub against this mesh bed deck mesh, and because these are metal screens, this is a wire mesh that you see here on the top of the deck. Underneath you will see these punch sheet. So this is what I was referring to earlier when talking about sieve selection. Now this changing of the deck bed's top mesh is, what shall I say, is cumbersome. In the way the machines are available today, it's fairly cumbersome. You need to unthread a lot of bolts, remove a few components, and then change it. And that's not always possible. So what we do, I'll go back to this image. So what we often do is that we have a grader, a destoner. Oh, actually, I do not have an image of that. Just give me a second, please. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This, just from the background, you can probably see that this is a different destoner from that one. So this is the second destoner that we use in a processing unit, other than the huller, which has an aspirator integrated with it. We have a grader, a size grader, which is common for both post-hulling and pre-hulling operations. In the grain cleaning operations also, we use, sorry, apologies for so many scrollings. We use the same size grader. Now in the pre-hulling operations, we use this density grader over here. And in the post-hulling operations, we use the smaller density grader in addition to this density grader. So we first do a rough pass through this, and the multiple operations, the multiple operations that we need to do, the multiple loops that we need to do over here, we do it with two destoners rather than a single destoner. Okay, so let's get back to the destoner. Now, what is the use of using this destoner in this fashion? And it all comes down to, oh, actually, I just wanted to talk about the machine checks. Now, what is it that could fail in a density grading operation? The first thing that we need to watch out for, similar to what you probably noticed or that I was trying to underline earlier, is the clogging of the sieve. The bed mesh here in the destoner is critically, it needs to be open. Its eyes should be open and it should not be clogged. If it is clogged, our airflow through the bed mesh gets obstructed and our efficiency of the destoning goes down. And as I mentioned earlier, you cannot have a thin slice of the size distribution coming to this. By itself, the huller output will have a wide size distribution, and that has to be put through a size grader before it comes to the density grader. Why? That is because unless we get properly size graded thin slice of material, we will end up clogging our deck bed mesh. This, if it gets clogged, then basically whatever air that we are blowing through, a very small fraction will come through the mesh and give us that force to blow the unfilled grains, or in this case, the unhulled grains downward. Unhulled grains are less dense. The rice is more dense. So the rice goes to the back and the unhulled grains comes to the front. Now, if we do not have adequate amount of air coming through the bed mesh, then a lot of these unhulled grains will also come out along with the rice. And that's why we need to ensure that this mesh remains unclogged. Now, in when talking about the size grader, I mentioned about using a brush to clean the bed mesh often in the size grader. Now that's because there's no air coming through and the bed mesh is just coming, the material is just flowing down. So there is no tossing of the material happening. So in that, it doesn't matter. It actually helps in improving the efficiency of the grading, size grading, if you run a brush over the sieve. Now, in a density grader, the sieve mesh is not used for size grading. So you cannot, it's used to let the air come through, and if you were to put your hand and a brush over there, you would be blocking the air and therefore making, not just making it inefficient, you would be defeating the purpose of the density grader. So we cannot run a brush on the density grader's bed mesh, and therefore it becomes critically important that we do a proper size grading. I'll just repeat that. The post hulling output has to be graded perfectly if possible, I mean under realistic conditions, so that your destoner bed mesh does not get clogged. And we select the sieve in the size grader based on the sieve that we need on our destoner or density graders deck bed. Okay, so I'm sorry, it's a bit, a lot of words, and I cannot show you the process itself because it's not something that captures very well on video. So we will, we have a video manual also. At the very beginning, Ashish was mentioning about 10 series online sessions that we did with the support of RRA Network. I think this was during COVID. And there's another 10 series of just processing that was done with IDRC Dhan Foundation, IDRC funded and done by Dhan Foundation. So both of these links we will share with you, the playlist, so that you can go through them and we can engage offline also in a more serious discussion. So the other thing that we need to watch out for is the belts that run these machines. They have to be tight. Now, a loose belt would not matter too much in a size grader, but in a density grader, it matters a lot because it is going to change one, the fan speed, and therefore the air volume that comes through the mesh of the deck bed, and two, it is going to change the force with which the toss happens. Now the top pulley here is driving the elliptic, and the bottom pulley here and the bottom belt is driving the fan that blows the air. So both these belts have to be properly tight, and this is something that we need to keep checking for, because as I mentioned earlier, a density grader, it is an extremely non-linear device machine, and the output would change dramatically if our input parameters change even slightly. So yeah, so that's enough of the technical stuff, and I've already talked for almost 40 minutes now. So let's get to the consequences. What is the result of all these emphasis on size and density grading? Now, essentially, it helps us reduce the number of post-hulling operations. And that reduced post-hulling operations ensures that we have better bran retention, and not just in terms of quantity of bran retained, but also in terms of the quality of the bran. There will be fewer scratches on it, and therefore it will be less oxidized by the time it reaches the consumer. And what we have seen is that many a time we are able to achieve better quality of the bran and the rice, therefore, in the in the material that we have processed using this process flow, better than hand processed. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but it is actually true that there is less brand damage, not brand retention, but brand damage is lesser in the machine processed with this kind of process flow than there is brand damage compared to what happens when you hand process it. When it is hand processed, there is better brand retention, but there is more brand damage. In the process flow that we are talking about, we have a little more comparative to hand processed, we have more brand loss, but we have less brand damage. Now, overall, what does this mean? This means that we are able to reach more nutrition, more tastier grains, rice grains to our consumers. Now, these are all the lovey-dovey stuff. Now, what is the sweating out stuff? The sweating out consequences of this are one, it means it increases the pre-hulling operations. And I emphasize this even when talking about the process flow. We do maximize the amount of operations that we do in the pre-hulling stage. And it increases the skill needed for operating this kind of a process flow. And some of you might be familiar with the work that we do. We are focused on a community oriented approach. We are looking at not just getting good grains and good material, good quality output, but we are also looking at how we can improve the life and lives of our community partners. So because of that, and as you saw from the images, people from the community come operate the machines on a part-time basis. There are multiple people who are trained so that more people can operate these machines and gain livelihoods out of this. Not complete livelihood, but supplementary livelihood is how it's working out right now. Now, this skill development is an essential component of any community's welfare. Unless we have investments in skill development, we are really not improving the lives of our community members. So what are the other consequences of this? Other consequences is that we need to repeatedly check for quality. As you could see from the dense process flow diagram, there are various crucial quality check points, and that repeated quality checks is essential in order to ensure the quality of the output. Now, what does this do? This ensures, or this results in a shorter supply chain. Why is that? This is because we, as I mentioned in the beginning of the session, we have more brand retention, and a higher brand retention and lesser damage will improve the nutritional quality of the output, not just for us humans, but also for other species. And therefore, it has a shorter shelf life. And I also mentioned about the oxidation. So even if we are able to protect it from infestation and seal it up, the oil content of the bran will result in a shorter shelf life. Now, one can see this as a negative. We see this as a positive because what we are doing with this is building our local markets. And because we take a community approach, we are looking to, like to give you concrete numbers for this, 70 to 80% of our sales happens within 50 square kilometers of the processing unit. So 70 to 80% of the sales. And we are able to sustain ourselves because we are looking at the entire operation, not just as a market oriented one, but rather as a community oriented one. So just to conclude, what exactly are we talking about? We are talking about making millets worth what people are buying. and that happens only when the bran is retained. Drudgery of manual processing can be reduced without losing out on nutrition. We have seen this again and again with skilled operators who are from the community. We are able to achieve this. And in order to do all this, we do emphasize on this community oriented approach, and why and what and how is something that we can discuss in another session. And of course, after all this happens, there's also the second part of the story, which is how do you cook without losing the nutrition? So cooking without losing the nutrition is yet another story that we can possibly explore in another session or discuss more in the Q&A if somebody is interested. So thank you all for your patient hearing. And I would also like to thank RRA Network for hosting this masterclass, and Sehat Ka Bardana, and that's the consortium kind of thing, and Sangatin Kisan Mazdoor Sangathan, whose members you saw working the machines and preparing different aspects, demonstrating different aspects. So thank you very much, and let's have questions and answers. We have a good half an hour with us, and based on what you all are interested in, we can discuss, you know, those particular aspects.
Yes. The chat box is also open for everyone. If you want to,
Why is this not working?
yeah,
Okay.
drop it in the chat box, or it will be better if you can just unmute yourself, raise your hand, and then ask your question.
Damn, I'm not able to go into that matrix kind of thing. Let me just stop sharing and do this.
It was actually interesting. Yeah, I also got to know a lot of things. Yeah.
I'm glad. I mean, it was a little information heavy. Apologies for that. There's no way I could have made it any lighter than this, I felt, in in a short window. So yeah. Thank you, Sanjeev. Yeah, I'm glad it was accessible. If you have any questions, there are no stupid questions. The only question that is bad is the question that was not asked. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have. Yeah. So feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat window. Okay, how do I? Okay, I have to block some slides to see the chat window. Yeah. So just while you are gathering your questions, how much of a difference does the quality of the millets make? Yeah, please, Sanjeev, go ahead. We are not able to hear you, Sanjeev. Sumedha, are you able to hear Sanjeev?
Yes.
He has
So
raised his hand.
actually, we just lost. There is a power cut in our office, so I lost my network for a while. Yes,
Okay.
I reconnected again.
Sanjeev, you're not. Yeah, please. You are unmuted now. Please speak.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for this valuable information. And uh, I missed a little bit part as I was traveling to Chamba. So first,
Okay.
I missed it, but it was a very valuable information for me as I'm working in a Pahar Trust, and I'm working on a project that is a project of Himachal government, that is a traditional seed village.
Lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, we are working on 10 villages. So that is how to preserve and procure our traditional seeds. So I think this information would really help our smaller farmers and the community.
Yeah. I just want to underline one thing. Yeah, I'll just go to that slide, which is this process flow here. So as part of the grain cleaning operations, I want to emphasize, because you mentioned about seeds and conserving seeds. So this is I hope you're able to see my pointer. So this here, oh, sorry. Yeah, this here is heavier grains and pebbles. Now, when you are using it to de-stone, you're not just removing the stones, but you're also removing the denser grains. Now, when we think of seed quality, you might remember, some of you might have come across this practice of using salt water and enough salt so that a boiled egg or a raw egg. Ashish, what is it, raw egg or a boiled egg? Or anybody, that you need to float. I think it's a raw egg, not a boiled egg. It should be a raw egg that should float. That much salt should be put in the water, and then you put the paddy grains in that, and whatever floats, you take that out. Whatever sinks are the ones that you to use as seeds for your nursery. Now, the same principle we are doing using without using water, and therefore allowing us, or using this density grader, and therefore allowing us to select denser grains for our seed material. So since 2014 we have been working in Sitapur on with this community approach, and because we are close to the farmers and we are separating out these heavier denser grains, we have what we call as a seed improvement over the years, because the quality of the seeds, that the grains that are used as seeds, is much better now than when compared to earlier, because every time we are selecting the denser grains. So very true, Sanjeev sir, that using this approach is extremely beneficial, even when you are focusing your efforts on just conservation of indigenous seeds and promotion of local seeds. And this is again something that gets done in the local community. So another point that I would like to emphasize there.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Any other
Yes.
Any other questions? Anything? Any other comments? Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Shubhadeep is also there. Shubhadeep, you have anything to ask? Sanjeevni.
If you didn't understand anything, you want me to repeat or explain something in more detail, we can take this time to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just mentioning earlier, before Sanjeev sir shared his thoughts and his experiences, that when it comes to size grading, people run through the size grader as if it's it's something that you just do it for the heck of it. The most crucial operation, and the operation in which we get the maximum return on investment on effort, is in the size grading. So what you see here as one person, dedicatedly rubbing and the sieves, clearing the clogged sieves, it might seem like a lot of effort and labor cost, but that labor cost is what ensures that our de-stoner doesn't get clogged, de-stoner bed mesh doesn't get clogged, and because it doesn't get clogged, we have a much better separation of the unhulled grains and the hulled rice. And that is why we are able to achieve a fairly good quality, not 100% quality, but 99% quality in a unit with just 4 machines, where we do not have a gravity separator, nor do we have a color separator. So this is a absolutely, what do you say, minimum kind of setup where we have just 4 machines with which we are able to achieve about grain cleaning operations. We can do about 500 kgs in a day with 4 people. And if the quality of the produce is good, we can even push it to 600, 650 kgs per day. But when it comes to hulling and post hulling operations, the quantity is much lower because, as you can imagine, the iterations are more, and therefore, and also it's based on consumption, not on production scale, because the grain cleaning after the grain cleaning operations, whatever comes out of this process just goes into storage, whereas whatever comes out of our hulling and post hulling operations has to go to the market and reach the consumer within a few weeks. We do still keep this material for at least 3 to 4 weeks, as in we keep that much stock. So that iteration of the hulling and post hulling operation results in us getting an output, not input, output. And the first one that I mentioned of the pre-hulling operations, the grain cleaning operations, that's the 500 to 650 kgs of input material. With the hulling and post hulling operations, we use the metric of the output rather than the input. We get an output of about 100 to, depending on the quality of the material, 80 to 120 kgs per day. So that is the kind of output we get from the hulling and post hulling operations. So, and the reason, that's the kind of quantity that we can use in 2 to 3 weeks. And every 2 weeks or so, we have hulling operations happening at the unit. And hopefully, with a growing market, we will be able to increase the frequency to at least twice a week. And that's where we are heading to with regard to the, a community-oriented unit that we have in Sitapur, Uttar Pradesh. Yeah. Any other questions that you might have?
I also do not see any question in the chat box too.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I would request participants if they can just unmute themselves and ask if they have any question or query.
Yeah, so just another quick, oh, I have a mistake in this slide. It's actually density grading. I'm sorry. I have this as size grading. So in this slide that we were talking about the bed mesh. Now what you see here is a wire mesh. And in many cases, you will actually see another kind of punch sheet mesh, which is not a round one like this or a slotted one like the other one that you saw, but rather what's called as a dimpled punch sheet mesh. Now, the dimpled punch sheet mesh is another mesh that is used. That's more used for paddy rice destoning and density grading, but it can be used for millets as well. Our experience has been quite bad with that, primarily because the dimpled one was resulting in more bran, damage. The bran was getting damaged a lot more in that dimpled punch sheet mesh that typically gets used in as the deck bed mesh. So we changed from that to a spring steel wire mesh. And because we have a tossing of the grains, we also saw that when we use a regular steel mesh or a stainless steel, even a stainless steel wire mesh, the wires were getting eroded. The size of the wires were changing as the machine aged because of the abrasion from the grains. So the reason I'm sharing this is that this abrasion of the grains is, I mean, it's quite strong. It's quite a significant thing that even stainless steel can get, the wire mesh can become thinner. The wires in that mesh can become thinner because of the abrasion. It's really amazing to think that, the husk that we remove, and if we don't remove it and we keep rubbing it against steel, even stainless steel gets eroded. One, and two, the same husk, after you have taken it off and you pass it over this mesh, and the bran layer that is inside that husk, that poor thing gets really eroded because of each pass on this steel mesh. So in some sense, the steel mesh is getting its revenge for getting eroded by the grains. It's taking its revenge not on the grains but actually on the rice. I mean, just to give it a very different perspective, that the same mesh that gets eroded because of the grains will erode the bran of those very grains that were causing the abrasion. So it's what goes around comes around, the whole sustainability principle. That's true even when it comes to these machines and these processes. So yeah, I mean, just a side story to the whole density grader, size grader, bran, and erosion story. So if there are no other questions, I would like to take a few minutes to talk about another aspect, which is, why do we have this? No, you stay here. Why do we have all these extra windows? The photograph was taken through the back window. There's another side window over here. And of course, there's this control window where we control the airflow into the destoner. Now, the reason for these additional windows, and this is not there in standard designs, these are things that we have developed over the years, or we have insisted to put in machines over the years, so that we can clean the inside of the destoner box. Now, however good our sieve selection might be, however good our size grading might be, invariably there will be material. As I was saying, there is abrasion that happens as the grains flow over this, unhulled as well as hulled. Now, the unhulled grains will abrade the mesh itself. But the hulled grains, when they fall on this and flow over this and are tossed in the destoner operation, they will shatter some more. And those will fall through the mesh, this bed mesh, despite the air coming through. Some of that will clog, as you can see in this. And in this photograph, you will see that some of these have got clogged or stuck here. And there will be some that will fall through and collect at the bottom over here. Now, in the standard destoner that you have, whenever you open the back door, you will see a huge amount of material inside, full of infestation. Now, if you have infestation inside the destoner, you will naturally have infestation in the material that comes through such destoners. Even though it may not directly flow on this bottom of the box, whenever there is, we have to recognize that the air is blown from inside this box, and any eggs or infested material that is accumulated at the bottom of the box because of the strong turbulent airflow will get thrown up, and some of them will actually come back out through the bed mesh and into our material. So we insisted on putting in these additional doors in the destoner or the density grader, so that we can go inside periodically at the end of each operation, at the end of each day's work, so that we can clean up the bed of the bottom, the box of the destoner, And also, as part of the daily cleaning operations, we clean up the bed mesh to remove all these clogged ice or the material that is clogging this. And then when you remove this or unclog it, it basically falls through the bed, and you unclog this, and then you open up the box through the various doors that you have and clean out the material using a blower in the reverse mode so that you can suck out the material. So yeah, I mean, that's another technical aspect that we use in density grading that extremely essential, because like I mentioned earlier, the bran retained rice is extremely nutritious, not just for us humans. It's also nutritious for the other species, including those that we classify as pests. Yeah, I think that's kind of captures that aspect of it. Why do we need all these doors in a destoner or a density grader? And like I mentioned earlier, it's also important to have these so that we can keep checking for our the tightness of our belts. So it's much easier when you have a door near the belts, and that's what we have done here. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts that you would like to share? I don't see any raised hands. Rambab Garu has joined us. If I remember you rightly, sir, you are a big proponent of millets, a promoter of millets. You have been writing, and you're the editor of Sakshi, is it? If I remember right. And I don't know if you're still the editor, but I remember you as editor of Sakshi. And he has been writing consistently over many years on millets, and especially brand retained millets. And Rambabu Garu, this is how we achieve that. So if you can unmute and share some thoughts, I would really appreciate that. I see that you do not have your video enabled. So, but if you can unmute and share your thoughts, I think it would add a lot of value to our class today. Doesn't look like.
Unmuted, but we cannot hear us.
Okay.
Must be some
Okay. Yeah, maybe he's not in a situation where he can unmute.
internet
Yeah.
issues.
So, okay. Any other thoughts? Anything that anybody would like to share with regard to their experiences of millet processing or size grading and density grading especially? I would really appreciate that. If you find something to be not very clear, feel free to ask now, or you can watch the recording of this session and come back to me offline. I think I have shared my contacts everywhere. My phone number and email is on this last slide, of course. And just a second. In this slide, you can contact me over phone or email anytime. Preferably send me a message so that we can schedule some time and talk rather than calling me. And even if you call me, I don't mind it. I'll just ask that we schedule a time and set up the time. So bear with me on that. You are welcome to visit Sitapur, Uttar Pradesh, Sehat Ka Bardana anytime. There is a standing team there which is working on millet production and processing and mixed cropping and sustainable farming approaches. In the at the start of this session, Ashish and I were discussing a residency program that we are doing on food systems that Ashish has shared the link to in the chat. If you just scroll up the chat, or Sumedha, if you can just copy that and repaste it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because if I remember right, Zoom does not give us access to the chat from before we logged in.
Yes,
And
right.
we'll also share that in the comments to the YouTube video. And also, if anybody is interested, please register for that. It's a 3-day, if I remember right, residential kind of a residency. It's not a course as much as it is interactions with practitioners in the field. So we have Dr. A.R. Vasvi, we have Dr. Sanchita, we have Dr. Richa Kumar, we have Sudha, we have Nagavaripu, and we have a couple of other resource persons other than myself who will be participating in the residency, who will be available for detailed discussions or even to spend some time at Sehat Ka Bardana to get familiar with the machines and the processing. And not necessarily as a training course, but rather as a hands-on engagement. Yeah, so that is another opportunity that I would like to highlight. There's another ongoing course right now called organized by the Farm Food Systems Multiversity, if I remember the name right. I think Ashish has shared the link to that as well. In case he has not, before he logged out, we will share that in the in the comment section of the YouTube video that of this session, and also we can share it with you all. Food Systems Multiversity is organizing various courses on different aspects of sustainable food systems. And I think the current ongoing course that Ashish and I were talking about earlier is about food enterprises. So anyway, so let's come back to our master classes. Thank you, everyone. This has been a good session. We had, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Sumedha, I'm probably doing your work. I shouldn't be.
No problem. I'll be very happy if you do it. But yeah, I mean, from personally, if I say it was really informative for me also. It was little technical, but yes, as you mentioned that कहीं कहीं पे जितना जरूरत था, you mentioned that, and somewhere you cannot skip all those things. But yeah, I mean, you gave a clear and practical understanding of post hulling operations and walked us through the principles and practice of size and density grading. And I could see a lot of machines also, like the size grader, density grader, and huller. So yes, thank you so much, Dwiji, for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you so much to all the participants for joining. And yes, we'll be uploading this session like we always do it on YouTube, and we'll also share the link on our social media platforms. So if you're following us, then it will be easier for you to check out the social media platform and just get the link directly from there. And yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Sumedha, for coordinating this. And I'm like I mentioned, I didn't expect too many people to join this session, primarily because it's a fairly technical aspect that a lot of things don't necessarily communicate that well on an online session. But I also am really glad that we did this session because it's a reference that I can point people to if they want to understand these operations better. So thanks a lot to RRA Network and Sumedha, individually for coordinating this and hosting this. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you all. Bye. Yeah.